Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Big Bill coming to you live from YouTube Model Builders Into the Locomotive Shop. And tonight's the 17th of January, and we have with us our very own Joe Desmond from Central Jersey Conrail and Scale. And Joe, tonight we didn't broadcast last week due to personal reasons. Joe had some what happened, Joe? You got stuck at work, or
no? That was last month.
Last month, right?
We're on time this month.
What's that?
We're on our right time slot this month, but we're not going to be doing what we plan to be doing this month.
Right, exactly. No, I'm just saying last month we were supposed to be on, but we didn't do the personal, reasons.
That is correct.
Right.
Yes.
So we're on this month, but for all of you out there, welcome to Into the Locomotive Shop. Again, today is January 17th, 2018, 17 days into the new year, and one of our very first show with Joe Desmond. And again, Joe Desmond has his own YouTube channel, which is the Central Jersey Conrail and N Scale. And tonight, Joe will be talking and in regards to airbrushing. Is that correct, Joe?
That is correct, Bill.
You're the man, Joe. You're the man.
No, you're the man.
No, you're the man, Joe. And just so that we have some with today is, like I said, the 17th, and we're how many? We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days away from the clinics at Amherst. If any of you guys are going up to Amherst, Massachusetts, yours truly will be there, and a couple of other guys from the YouTube community will be up there as well. So we'll be looking forward to meeting you all guys up there, and I hope it's a great show. I'm doing the clinic for 2 days and then the show, and then so hope to see you rambling about the floor, and if that, you guys can buy me a hot dog and a soda. See me, all right? But anyway, right back to Joe Desmond.
What clinic are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing all the clinics. I have with the clinics. Let me see. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm doing the Michael Connell Chooch hands-on. I'm doing weathering plastic kits. I'm doing backdrops. I'm doing a rail clinic and paints and glues. I'm doing a Ralph Renzetti workbench to mainline. Layout command control, that new thing that they're doing. And rolling stock tune-up.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, well, it's a busy schedule, and I again, I'm pushing Amherst, and only reason because I went 2 years ago, and it was like it's a train show on steroids. It truly is. It really is. If you get a chance and you get the time off and you can do it, by all means, come on down and do it, because first in the clinic, is really hands-on and it's educational, and then you meet a ton of other modelers and get to converse with them and share ideas with them, and it's a good time to swap old train stories with them, and exaggerate about how big your derailment was, and and your layout is like 3 times the size of Penn Central, and stuff like that. But it's good. If you get a chance, you guys should come down. It's really a good time. And then there's the show, which is on Saturday and Sunday, and it's helps for good causes, charity causes within the community. So that's a good thing. But it's I understand they added 2 more buildings this year to the already 5. Just 1. I was corrected. Just 1 building. But still, all in all, the buildings in itself are like small mini like Nassau Coliseums and small arenas. They hold livestock shows there, so that can tell you if they can fit cattle and horses in there, then you know how big it is. But you can't do the show in 1 day. You can't walk it in 1 day. And if you do come, please bring your good walking shoes. Don't wear flip-flops. Don't wear shoes that rub you the wrong way, because you'll get blisters and you'll be out of commission. So if you do come to enjoy, have fun, meet the people, and a lot of the you know, guys that, you know, from Model Railroad Magazine. Walters is there. Trademaster TV is going to be there. You know, so you get to see those guys. You know, if you want to bring a, you know, a baseball and have them autograph it. You know.
So it sounds like it's the show's kind of on the big show that was just up north, Train Fest. Yeah,
something like that. It kind of like kicks off the modeling season for the new year. So plus it helps for a worthy cause. So it's pretty good. So, but anyway, I digress. Let's get back to you, Joe. Joe, we're going to be doing airbrushing tonight.
Yes. So I initially had planned on doing a locomotive for everyone tonight. However, there's been some supply issues. You know, we had some storms, and the person who was getting the parts to me, or the company, they corresponded with me, and of course they're not going to be here until 2 days after the show. So, but so I figured we had a lot of questions about the airbrushing, so let's go over some of the airbrush techniques and stuff that I do. You know, and let the Q&A go and see where we go.
That sounds like a plan. I like that. So the apparently they didn't know that this was for YouTube model builders. Otherwise, this would have been here 15 minutes ago, right?
Right? You would think.
How you think? What, you know, what's up with this? You know, I don't understand this. Don't we have priority? Where are we on the ladder here? You know,
I don't know.
Are we on the bottom rung, or are we, you know, don't we rate? Come on.
Yeah. So what I did for everyone was change the scenery, you know, so you're not looking at my bookshelf in my office. I moved the camera down here into the layout room, and because my spray booth and all my equipment's down here, so something new for me too, broadcasting here from the layout room.
And how is the Central Jersey Conrail N-scale layout coming along?
It's coming really well. I mean, actually today, I'll swing the camera over. I was showing before, I was working on the yard, got 4 tracks in. I was able to move up all my stuff out of the staging. So, you know, the yard's coming along. We'll be hopefully next week wrapping that up. There's the engine facility over there and the big helix. And if I come and pan back, trying to do this nice and gently so I don't make you all sick.
Yeah, no, it looks great. If you guys get a chance, check out Joe's YouTube channel. Like I said, it's Central Jersey Conrail N-scale, and he has a real good YouTube channel. Now, I'm going to forewarn you guys. I know that when you watch channels and you always click on their you know, their videos, you always, I know I do, you always check the right-hand corner to see the time, to see how long the videos are. I will forewarn you that Joe's videos are long, but here's the disclaimer, and here's the good thing. Joe doesn't tell you, you know, Joe's are about 38 minutes, some 40 minutes, but Joe will tell you, he doesn't tell you, well, I'm going to cut 72 pieces of styrene at an eighth of an inch, and then go about cutting 72 as you watch him cut 72 in real time. What he does is he tries to speed the camera up, but then in those times in between the speed up, he gives you really relevant information. So it's really worth your time and effort to watch the entire of Joe's video. I know that the first time I saw it, I was like, I'm not going to watch this whole thing, and I did watch it, and I was really glad that I did, because it was informative and it was entertaining. So get a chance, Central Jersey Conrail N-scale.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah. Actually, that voiceover, the high speed with the voiceover, I can credit that to my brother-in-law. He's a producer for ESPN, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you do it this way?" And I tried it, and it came out really good. And it's kind of what my benchmark on my channel is those high speed cuts with the overdubbing and the music. So,
well, that's good. It really makes it work. So
yeah.
So what are we doing with the airbrushing tonight, Joe? What's
So what I'm planning on doing is we're going to go over some nomenclature, and we'll talk about some of the different airbrushes and stuff, and then we're going to get into setting up the brush, and I'll show you some different spray patterns, and I got some samples that we can paint. I'll show you how to clean it, and then we'll I got a couple old cars that I pulled out of my junk box that we can, you know, mess around with different colors for weathering, so you can see the different effects. And I'll show you the setup and how I have everything set up at my spray station. And then we'll go over actually cleaning up for the night and show you all the stuff that we use to clean it, because I know there was lots of questions about that in previous previous shows that we've done.
Okay. So I like it. So let's get rocking and rolling.
All right. So give me a second. I'm going to rotate the camera around. I'm going to have to drop it too.
Take your time.
Going down. You recognize that little puppy there, huh, Bill?
Oh yeah, there you go. The old spray booth.
You want to give everybody the background while I'm getting my chair?
Yeah, actually, I do want to give people the background, and I want to give homage to my cousin Bill Meany. Back in 1984, I'll keep it brief and brilliant. Back in 1984, 83, 84, I had seen an article in Model Railroad magazine on how to build your own spray booth, and it was riveted. It was all rivets out of sheet metal. And the guy was going on and on about it. And I took the plans to my cousin Bill Meany, who was a tin knocker, union tin knocker, you know, for many, many years. And I showed him the thing, and he said, yeah, I think I can do something for you. And he came back in about a week's time. And what you see in front of you is the spray booth that he put together from the plans. There are no rivets. It's basically seams that he had put together, and what he did was he custom put the light thing where the light goes, and he put the exhaust fan, the hood, everything he did was, and what he did was he put 2 pieces of metal back there. He made so that you can put the the filter on there, and he gave it to me, and it sat in my garage because my plans were to eventually, you know, get into airbrushing, to which it never materialized, and it just sat in my garage. And then when the South Brooklyn Railroad came along, I was like I was doing rattle cans, and I really wasn't into the cleaning up. I have an airbrush, I do, but I wasn't into doing the extensive work that Joe does and other modelers do. So I had seen Joe on his video,
Saturday Night Show,
right? And he was talking about how he was going to purchase and get a spray booth, and I said, that seems like a waste of money and time and energy. So I reached out to him and I said, would you like to have this spray booth? And he was like, oh, okay. So he lives in New Jersey, right over the border from me. And he came up one day and he checked it out and he said, yeah, sure. And Joe took the spray booth away, and now it is being used the way it should have been. My cousin Bill passed away many years ago. Retired from the Tin Knockers Union, lived a very happy and productive life, and you know, passed away. So this basically his memory and homage to Bill Meany. So that's the spray booth, and Joe has done a wonderful job with it. He actually uses it, and it looks great with all the spray in there and everything. So it's used good, and I'm glad that it found a good home.
Yeah, so you know, it was bare metal when you gave it to me, so I cleaned it up. I used a self-etching primer, and I sprayed it a nice Conrail blue. The air filter, what we're using is a furnace filter. It's actually the furnace filter size is a little custom. I had to special order. It's a 24 by I think it's 12 by 1. So it's a little oddball. So you have to special order them. And then on the back side of this, what you hear running is a blower motor. It's a centrifugal blower motor, and that is from Granger.com. And then the output, if I swing my camera up, goes out through a dryer hose up into the ceiling, where I have my duct. I'm not going to I can't go any further with the camera. So up in the ceiling, there's a duct and the pipe runs all the way out because we're in the basement here, so I don't want any fumes down here. And then, so that's the basic setup of the spray booth. And then what I did is I took it one step forward and I put a little cart down below, and I got my Posh airbrush or compressor. It's got a this is a good compressor. Got a nice little tank on it. So as you can see right now, it's not running, so there's no noise. We have air in the tank, so we're ready to spray, and then it'll cycle on and refill. Make sure, the big thing is when you're setting up a compressor is to make sure you have a moisture trap. And this one here from Posh actually comes with a moisture trap. And when I got the Badger hose, that also has a moisture trap built in. So you can see there. So what you would do is you hit this little, oh, I got to turn the air on.
Hey, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Not to interrupt you, but in regards to Sparky has a question. He says, why can't you just cut down a normal furnace filter to fit? He says custom would be expensive.
No,
yes?
When I meant, I'm sorry. Let's go back here. When I meant custom, I didn't mean custom. It's not a custom filter. It's an oddball. It's not something you can go to Home Depot and just grab off the shelf. So I had to actually find a company online and order them. They're really inexpensive, Sparky. This filter is only like $6. So I didn't mean to say custom. I meant to say odd. It's not going to be something you're going to get at the store. So
right.
And it really, it works out really well. There were some people had brought up in the beginning about possibly paint passing through and getting stuck on the centrifugal blower. But so far to date, I've taken this thing off and checked, and there's nothing sticking on the fan. So we're not getting any paint particles passing through. So that's a good thing. So that. Hopefully that answers Sparky's question. So go ahead, Bill.
And he wants to know, how long does it last for?
That's going to be a trial and error basis right now. It all depends on how much spraying we do. And, I am looking at this. We're probably getting close to the end because I'm losing all of my white on the filter. So I'm assuming it's probably about time to change it out.
Now I remember when you came, when we were talking about that, I'm just spending a little time on the chamber itself. You said between that and there were other types of filters, like a cross-air filter and a bottom draft filter.
Okay.
Could you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so there's two different...
Like sold at Micro Mark?
Okay, so from my research, there's two general types of spray booths. There's a downdraft and a cross draft. This style of booth that you have built was actually a cross draft. And what that means is this is where the suction is coming from in this booth. So we're drawing air across our work surface, and we're evacuating the paint particles across out of the back. So that's where the term cross draft comes from. A downdraft is really what you see in the Micromart one, where the filter is on the bottom and you put your workpiece here and the paint particles get drawn to the bottom and taken out. Okay. I don't know. I've never used a bottom draft, but my personal thinking is that if you look at that, I got my work surface on a filter. Like, this isn't very stable. And, all I can think of is being on a downdraft is that it's like rocking around. So that's why I really wanted to go with a cross draft. Right.
Makes sense.
Okay. So we're back down with our compressor here. So I actually have two, I have a moisture trap down here, and then in line here I have a moisture trap. And that's just to catch any extra little paint, moisture particles or oil particles that make it through the main one. And if you look, you can just, when you hit this little needle valve, that blows out any of the debris on the bottom. So that's really key, because you don't want to be blowing, if you're using, let's say, a nice acrylic paint, you don't want any oil going through there. Or if you're painting with a nice oil-based paint, you don't want any moisture going through there. So that's really what these mechanisms are for, is to catch all that extra stuff so it doesn't mix with your paint. So, and then what I've done here is I've put in a distribution block on my, this is not the way it comes. So in the future, hopefully soon enough, I can get a second airbrush line and have two airbrushes set to go on my station. So right now I'm just running with the one.
Right. How and again, what kind of compressor is that?
This one is it's a Posh. I bought it through Micromart.
Okay.
So, and then down here, you know, I put a little convenience factors down here. I made sure to put drawers, and that has all my appliances that I need for spraying. I got some airbrush, some paint brushes, and other little doodads and knickknacks that I need. A big thing here is we're going to be using, I might as well get them out now while I'm in the drawer, because we'll be using our little sticks. And so, you know, just to make it all convenient. And then everything's on wheels because, you know, with my layout room, it's not like a big, huge area.
Right.
So, you know, when I set up for op sessions, both the workbench, which is right next to me here, if you can see it at the corner if I move my head, this workbench and this, they're on wheels, so we can just roll them right out and get them out of here. So that's really why it's on the cart. So now, you know, let's look at the airbrush. So what I'm using tonight is it's a Badger 155, and what this kind of brush is it's a gotta wait for my camera to focus. There we go. This is an dual action internal mix. So let's go over some nomenclature here. So dual action. Now, what dual action means is when I press this button, I get the airflow, and there's my compressor cycle on, sorry, right as I start talking.
We can still hear you.
So when I hit this button, that gives me the airflow, and the more I push it down, the more pressure I get out coming out of the nozzle. Now that's this first action. The second action of this one is when I pull it back, that opens up my needle and allows the amount of paint flow to flow out. So if I want a little bit, I just pull it back a little. If I want a lot of paint, I pull it all the way back. So that's what this, that's what the dual action means. This is an internal mix. So if you look, here's our pickup chamber here, this little tube here.
Right.
This is our nozzle here. So what happens is the paint gets siphoned up here using the Venturi principle. So what happens is it pulls the paint up and it mixes in this little chamber in here and then comes out as a mist, an atomized paint. So there's also something called an external mix, and those are the ones that you'll see that have two nozzles out front, and they kind of like come together at a point. So what happens with those is the same principle, however, that the paint mixes outside of the brush and atomizes. So that's where the difference between an internal and external mix. And then this is a dual action because it has the two functions, where a single action I would just push down and that would give me my airflow. And then to control your paint flow, you'd have to adjust the nozzle on the end. So that is the two different, that is the different styles of airbrush.
Okay. Okay. So this one is like, again, as you said before, is a dual style. So you control the flow of air and the amount of paint that you're going to put out. Correct. Okay.
Now you can also, there's something in this here called the needle, and you can change different size needles. Right now I have this set up with a fine. I know they have mediums for the Badger 155s, but the Badger 155s will not accept the heavy needle. You actually have to go to a different style of airbrush. So they have the 3 different style needles, and what will happen is if I take this cap off here carefully so we don't bend it.
That's how delicate this needle is.
Yeah, there's a, you don't want to ding the tip up, but if I hold this up to the camera, let's see, it's not going to focus, I don't think. Up at the top here is this little tip. That is the needle, and it runs in a solid shaft all the way through the brush. So, and my camera's not picking it up very well. This trick usually works. So that little needle in there goes all the way through the brush, and you can change those.
Oh yeah.
See? So that's how that controls the paint flow. So now we have to be careful putting this back together so we don't ding it up, because I want to paint for you guys. So, all right.
How much, if you don't mind me, I know the question will come. How much would what are the price ranges on these brushes, on these airbrushes?
Ow. I'm gonna have to refer to the old Google Master because I forgot. Badger 155. Shopping. Right now, the Badger 155 is listed on Amazon at $79.
That's not bad.
No, that's not bad at all. I think when I bought mine new, it was close to like 110. So, you know, I've gotten a lot of questions. I've seen a lot of questions on Facebook. I've gotten a lot of questions on my page is about airbrushes. So let me just put it this way. You know, you get what you pay for. If you go out there and you buy a good brush like the Badger or the Posh or the Iwata, you know, there's tons of them out there, and they're all good quality brushes. You know, they cost a little bit of money. You know, you're going to be spending, you know, $70 to $100 or $120 for a good brush. But this brush here is 15 years old. And because I've taken care of it, it's lasted me this long. And the other thing about when you buy a brush of this caliber is the parts are replaceable. So if I ding my needle, I get a new needle. If the nozzle goes bad, I can replace the nozzle. If the spring goes bad, these parts are fully serviceable in these brushes. So with good care and good use, it should last you a long time. So my point was on Facebook the other day, I said, you know, instead of cheaping out and going to buy the cheap kits because you don't want to spend the money, save your pennies and you'll have a brush that'll probably last you through your whole modeling career.
Right.
And
right.
the other thing, I'm sorry,
go. I'm sorry.
So then the other thing I was saying was, you know, and everybody's like, well, you know, I don't want to spend the money on the compressor. I want to buy the canned air. But okay, so you're going to buy the canned air. Let me just put it in perspective this way. If you're going to use the canned air, it may be fine, but you know, how much do those cans cost? How much cans of air are you going to be using? Think of it from that perspective, that if you save up your money and you get a compressor, you don't have to keep buying cans of air for your airbrush.
This is true. This is true.
So you got to look at it from those perspectives. Is, you know, it's cost over the long term. You know, pay me now or pay me later. You know, that's always the big thing.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. You know, exactly.
And you know, to be honest, the other thing you got to look at too is I have a good brush, I have a good setup. You know, I go to spray. I'm not getting spitting. I'm not getting splatters, and I'm not ruining $200 to $300 models trying to do a simple weathering job. That's the key too. You know, you buy an inexpensive brush. I'll just say the word inexpensive. I'm not going to say the other word, the C word. You know, you buy an inexpensive brush, you're probably not going to get the quality that you're expecting. And personally, I'm not going to take that risk on a $200 locomotive. I just can't.
Right, right. So it really boils down to the priorities that you have. And if it's something, again, if it's something that you're looking forward to doing and wanting to do, you're going to take the time first and foremost to investigate and to check out info on certain airbrushes and, you know, see what works and what's comfortable for you. And even if it's out of your price range, you're going to, you know, say, okay, maybe not now, but later, and save your money. You know, if you do extra side jobs, you know, most of us all do in some form or another, you know, or save our money up, and then once you purchase it, then it's that exploration of looking at it, taking it apart, putting it back together again, and, you know, just enjoying it, you know. Mm-hmm. As my man Clint Eastwood says, every man's got to know his limitations. That's why I gave the booth away, because I knew I wasn't going to get into this. It wasn't the fear factor or the money factor. It just knows that this is and each to his own, I would say. This is not the part of the hobby that I choose to dwell on, you know.
Let me jump in here a second.
Okay.
Yeah, Sparky 107, he said, but first time buyer, user, would it not be smarter to buy cheap? Sparky, not really, because that is a waste of money. I have a Pache airbrush. Now I don't have a airbrush compressor. I have a regular compressor, but I have double filters, water traps on it, one at the tank and then one back over where my paint booth is. So
Right.
that way condensation that builds in the line between the two, that last filter will catch that too. But you know, you're looking at, you know, if you got an air compressor already at home, you don't have to buy anything else. Just use that, just put an extra water trap on it, you're good to go. Just remember, let it build up with air and then turn the compressor off, because with a regular compressor, if you're airbrushing and it comes on, you get that pulsating air as it's building up pressure. But I've got one of those big vertical tanks.
I think to add to that, I think as you know, Sparky's question is a valid question. As a first-time buyer or user, would it be smart not to buy a cheap one? You know, I think that if you really want to get into this and find out what it is that you want to do, yeah, I don't think it would. I don't think that it hurts to buy a cheap one. But like John said, and I think that you know, Joe would agree. It's you're throwing good money after bad money. You buy it if you're really into it, and you can see the depth of what Joe and a lot of other modelers on YouTube do. You know, eventually what's going to happen is you're going to be like, you get frustrated. You know, with the limitations of the cheap one. So then you'd want to buy the old, but you've already invested X amount of dollars into it. So you don't want to, you'll have to wait, you know, and stuff like that. So I think sometimes it's better to, you know, in this situation.
Let's put it this way. If you've never airbrushed before and you don't want to spend the big bucks, okay, because you're not sure if you're going to like it, go out there and buy them starter kits. Yeah, absolutely. But don't sit down with your $250 brass overland locomotive and start spray painting and expect it to look like a showroom quality model. That's what I'm saying. Practice on some other stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I have used the you know, bought the cheap spray cans, you know, the you know, with the compressed air, and I used it to do track on my first layout, just to weather track. And it worked great. You know, I was able to spray the brown and whatever, and I got my use, and I used the 2 cans that it came with, and I was happy. Again, what distracted me from it was the aftermath, the cleaning up of the airbrush, you know, of running it through the water, of taking it apart and cleaning out the little rubber gasket. I know this for a fact because before I worked for the transit, I used to be a house painter, and I had a sprayer, a big for house spraying, you know, doing houses and apartments and such. And I know I used to dread it. I loved the tool. I loved using it. It made work a lot easier. But once the job was over, it was like you had to take it apart. You had to get to the rubber gaskets. You had to make sure that all the paint was out. You had to make sure that the hoses, the compressor was oiled. Yeah, it was more work than it, you know, it had to warrant me to take that machine out, and that was for a big job, you know, for a big payday. So yeah, to a certain extent, you know.
So what I also want to go back on is, you know, with the guys who are just starting out, and don't be intimidated that you need something like this big. Now, you know, I highly recommend if you're spray painting or you're airbrushing in a basement like I am, you need some kind of ventilation, whether it be the low-cost alternative to this. But, you know, you don't have to. If you're just starting out, you don't need a spray booth. You go set up a cardboard box in the garage just to make sure that you have airflow, and the cardboard box just catches all your overspray so you don't get it on your car and stuff. So, you know, there is options that you don't need to go jump head first into it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yeah. Joe G says, I bought a Harbor Freight for $30 so I can learn on it and get better before I spend the money on the better one. So I knew it would be part of the hobby I enjoyed. Sparky replies, well, no, Joe, cheap airbrush, cheap box cars, it has to be an art form too. Some have it, some don't, I think. And he continues to say, to me, it's a big step and a scary one. for the work involved. Yeah, I agree with both of you guys, and I think, yeah, it is a scary one, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. Sometimes the journey has to stop with one step, and you have to see, you know, again, Spog, yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in your assessment. And you have to know your limitations of how far you want to go. But as you get deeper into the hobby, you know, you'll find out what your likes are and what your dislikes are. I know my likes are, you know, weathering, but I like doing it with, you know, powders and stuff. I'm not into the airbrushing thing. So to each his own, which is, you know, we're just trying to, you know, here with Joe, we're just trying to give him, you know, a background on airbrushing. So it's not for every. It's like the buffet table. I always equate model railroad hobby to a buffet table. We take what we want, we go, we enjoy, we eat, and then we come back and we look a little further and we go, hey, I like this. I want to try this. I want to do this. You know, so you know, to each his own. So, Joe.
Okay, so you know, a couple other appliances that I picked up to have in here. Just, you know, the Tamiya makes some really good turntables, so you can put for work stands. So I keep those in there in case. But you know what I've been using a lot lately is this cheap $3 foam block that I got at Michael's. I love this. This is like the best, I think the best tool. I even like it better than the Tamiya turntables, to be honest with you. So what I do is I got a piece of styrene here. We're going to practice on that. So what I've done is I've taken some bamboo skewers. We've seen them. I've done them before. We've talked about it. I kind of stole the idea from Bill. Took some alligator clips, crimped onto some bamboo skewers, and all we have to do is just stick it down in our plastic, into our foam, I mean. And now we got a nice stable work platform, and my hands are free to work with the brush. So that's the key. So I guess we're gonna start shooting some color so we can show everybody, you know, the spray patterns and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll show you how I set up the brush. Now, when I first started airbrushing, I was big on using the old siphon cups, or I'm sorry, the bottles. I really liked them, but lately I've kind of really grown to use and like the gravity-fed cup. You know, it's very convenient for a small amount. So if I'm doing some weathering on a boxcar, I don't need a full bottle of paint to paint with. You know, just a little bit in the cup. But what the key with this cup, is if you don't paying attention, you just put it in there.
Right.
It falls out. So when you get your paint in there,
I hate when that happens.
It goes all over the place, right? So what you actually have to do is I push it up in there and then I twist it over. And it kind of locks it in there. So it's all nice and smooth now. So now I just, and then you can, when I shoot with these cups, I try to keep the cup as level as possible. It doesn't matter that my brush is on the side, you know, so that don't get hung up with that. Because when I first started using them, I was trying to spray where the cup was tilted and you get paint spillage. So that's the key. Just keep your cup.
Yeah, right. It becomes like an optical illusion. Like you think the paint needs to go a certain way, so you're tilting the brush a certain way.
Exactly, Bill. Exactly. This brush will work whether I shoot it on its side or this side. It doesn't matter. So keep your cup level.
Right.
All right. So what I'll do now is let me see if I can turn this so you can see it on the camera a little bit. Okay. So there's my my airbrush stand. We're going to be shooting with some. My favorite paint is Model Flex, the Badger company. We're going to use some Maroon Tuscan Oxide Red. Don't ask me where I got this color from because I don't know.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll put like about a pipette full, and I'll just put it in there. So now what I like to do is I like to have a little Chinese food container full of some water, and I immediately get clean water in that pipette because I like to keep them for a couple of uses. You know, I get them at Micromart for, you know, I think the package of 20 was a couple dollars. But I like to get a couple of uses out of them. I don't want to throw them away every time.
Sure. That's the reason why you can afford that nice airbrush.
Exactly. So now, key, before I get doing any work, I'm going to put the cap on my paint because I don't want to knock my paint over and get it everywhere. I'll put it out of the way.
Safety
now,
first.
What I like to do is using isopropyl alcohol, 70%. I put about 4 or 5 little drops in there. Now, the key is, though, this is acrylic paint. Don't do this with oil-based because it won't really work that well. Okay, there we go. We got some alcohol. I put about like 1, 2, 3. That's one more. There we go. That's about good. This is the feel thing. I find it makes the paint flow a little more. That's my personal opinion. Yes, we are using the Badger 155, the Anthem. Oh, okay.
PSI.
Right now, I got my PSI set to about 40. Now, I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to go up to about, oh, wait, let me cut in my air. So I'm going to bump it up to about 60. We're going to do 60 right now. So let me put it this way. Let me get up here. So what I'm doing is I'm setting my pressure. Now, generally speaking, when I'm working on a large piece like this, I like to keep it about 60 or so and to get a nice spray pattern and even coverage on the whole thing. If I was working on something small, like I was weathering this caboose, I would bring the pressure down to about 40. That's my personal opinion. It's just what I feel. So with the lower pressure, I don't get the paint blowing all over and I don't get big particles. When I bring the pressure down, the particles stay a little smaller and the pattern's a little smaller and I can control it more. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about pressure. Oh. Okay. Let me just center it on my workpiece. All right, so what I'm going to do first is...
just to interrupt you for a minute, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Does the PSI, the strength of the PSI, do you use that as a variable in doing certain projects?
Yes, yes. If I'm painting like a freight car, we're doing one color.
Right.
I would do like maybe 50. If I'm spraying a building like brick, I would probably, big piece like this, I'll probably use it about 60. If I'm doing small work like you've seen us do in the locomotive shop with the sand color paint, I'm down at like 30 to 40.
Okay.
That's how I like, because if I have too much pressure, it's going to blow that paint all over and I'm not going to be able to control it. So instead of me getting that fading effect that we get on our locomotives in the shop when we're doing it together, it'll do more of a coverage when I'm up at like 50 or 60, and I'll be covering over the decals and covering over the actual color.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm set. I did a little quick test on my block, and I got color. So now, when you start spraying the piece, you want to start and work in straight lines. Okay? You don't be doing circles or T's or anything like that. Just go straight across, back and forth. What I generally like to do is I start spraying over here off the piece on this side, bring my brush stroke all the way through, and I let off as my spray reaches on the outside. Because if you point it at the edge of the piece here, pull that trigger, you're going to get a splotch here. And then it's going to narrow down to a little beam, and then you'll stop here to let go, and you get another splotch here. So it'll look like a dumbbell. Whereas if I spray and continue straight through, you get a nice even line.
Right. Sort of like feathering.
Feathering, correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it in here. I'll pull my secondary back. I get a little paint flow. Just like that. Now, I'm waiting for my compressor so I can think. If you noticed, I got a little bit of bubbling right here on my paint. I don't know if we can see that in the light. There we go. Got that little bubbling right there. That's because the piece isn't primed. So we're just spraying on bare plastic, so we're not going to get the perfect coverage. So what we're going to do is just keep on spraying. Let me get it back in here. That's too much. See how heavy that was?
Yeah.
I pulled it back too much.
Right. You can see it was all over the place, the mist and everything.
Correct. So I'm going to bring my pressure down. Turn our workpiece, and we're going to have a nice clean surface. And I'm knocking things over.
Northern Star Railroad, Dwight, how are you? He wants to know, does the PSI vary according to how far the workpiece to the gun is? Maybe.
I'm sorry, Bill, you were talking over the compressor. What was the question?
Dwight wants to know from Northern Star Railroad, does the PSI vary according to how far from the workpiece the gun is? Like, is it further away? Does the PSI matter? Or if you're up close, do you lessen the PSI?
If you're spraying at 60 and you're up close, that's what happens.
Right.
So if you back away, you won't get that. You'll get a more even coverage at 60. So here what I did was I went back to where I'm comfortable, so I make sure my spray is inside the booth, so I'm not overwhelming the booth. So I bumped the pressure down. I went down to 50. So now I got to, if you look in this picture here, I don't know if it's whiting out or not, but it's a nice even coverage now. We don't have splotches and we don't have that big splatters.
Now, what we're getting on the Q&A, because you started out saying that you used the PSI of 60.
Yes.
Well, it seems that there's much of variation of opinion, saying that S&J Railroad says should follow airbrush manufacturer's recommendation as well as paint manufacturer's recommendations for pressure. I agree with Ron. 60 is way over my airbrush manufacturer's recommendation. And, you know, it seems that they're working between 20 and 45. And that 60 is crazy. Ron and Things says 60 is crazy. I never go above 30, you know. And Ron and Things again says 20 to 25 for painting, 15 for weathering washes. Ron Bryce says 25 maximum, any higher, and the model looks like crap, you know. So it seems that now this is I would. Since I've never done it, and I'm throwing my hat into the ring, is it based on preference? I mean, this is your preference, right, Joe?
Yeah, this is my preference, because if I'm looking at my paint bottle, there's no recommendations.
Yeah.
For PSI.
But you got to look at your paintbrush manufacturer like Pache. If you go above 50, you blow all the seals out of the brush. The brushes won't handle a pressure above 50. Yeah, like everybody's saying, like Joe says, it depends on your paint. If you're running a thick paint, you will have to turn your pressure up. If you got thinned down pretty good, yes, you have to turn it down. But you do have to look at the manufacturer's recommendation on their paperwork, because if you get too high, you will blow those seals and O-rings out.
All right, so now we're down to 40.
Okay.
Now if you look at 40, I'm getting a more even coverage. I got a little splatter. So now we're down at 40 now. We're not blowing everything out. My fumes are staying inside the booth. So you can see the difference in the can you see that on? Let me just do this. See the coverage now? So as I it's more of a manageable pressure.
Right. Right. So again, it's the feel and the look of what you're comfortable doing. And
correct.
You know your limits. You know your limits and your boundaries as to what works and doesn't work for you. So I would say it would be an individualized situation and the brush that you're using. And also, does the compressor have a say in the fact?
Say that again, Bill.
The compressor, does that come into factor?
It's got a pressure gauge on it. Yeah.
Right. Sparky 107 says this is starting to sound hard, look hard, and many opinions. And Dwight says, Sparky, that is how we learn from many questions and lots of discussions. And Sparky replies, true. And and I love Bruce's response to this is, think of the first time you used a hobby knife. It was sharp and full of risk, but I bet you went ahead and used it. You know, nothing gained, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And and Sparky brings up a good point. He also says, and I never thought this would be such a conversation. Well, Sparky, if you get model railroaders in a room, throw out the politics, throw out the religion, throw out the everyday happenstance, throw out your health, whatever is going on with you. Talk about something. We can talk about screws, 256-inch screws, and how it worked for someone and what somebody did to put on a thread so that it would tighten down and not loosen up as his steam engine ran around the thing. The conversations vary and are very lively and very active and very passionate. I have been in rooms with men who have literally yelled at each other over how many rivets should be on a boxcar, on a 1930s style boxcar. So the conversations can be lively and they can be fun, but most important is that, we're all having fun doing it and learning at the same time. So, you got to step out there and you got to figure out, this is what works for you, doesn't work for me. Again, the buffet table, you go to the table. Hey, I like this. I'm not too crazy about that, but I like this, Right. And Ron Bryce says there is no wrong way if you don't try it. Right. Just like there's no such thing as stupid questions, only the questions that's not asked.
So, okay. So let's look at this. Brand new piece of plastic. Now it's not primed. So forgive me. I kind of should have done that. I'm down at 15 pounds on the compressor.
Before you start, Joe, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I really don't.
That's okay.
Sparky, when you write true that, it's not TRUETHAT. It's TRUDA. True that. True that. Okay? I'll forgive you because you're from Canada. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
So now we're down to 15 pounds. For me to get coverage, I'm opening my brush up so much that now I'm getting splatter again. Or if I do it like this, look how light it gets. It's so light that we're going to be putting a lot of coats on. And I just blew it out again.
Right.
So when you go down too low, it can have the same effect as too high.
Right. So you got to find that medium that you're happy.
Medium. That's what I'm trying to show you here.
Right. AJ makes a good point. He says that airbrush is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. Like a table saw, electrical wiring, etc. It is something to be learned and mastered.
So I've demonstrated to you the different pressures and the effect it has on the pattern. So that's what? 60, we're overwhelming the booth.
Right.
My main concern here is with the safety. I want these fumes to stay in this booth. If I'm spraying that much paint at 60 and it's rolling out the side, out the front, it's too much.
Right.
We got to change. When we went to 50, the booth contained the fumes, the pattern was good, and we had a decent coverage.
Right.
That was around here. See, that was 60. This was our 50 and 40 because I did it split on the side, so we had a good coverage on here.
Right.
We went out from 40 I went down to 15 to over exaggerate, and that's what we got there. So you got to find these pressures based upon your paint, your brush, and what you're used to, and also your environment here too, because we don't want to overwhelm the booth, because I don't want to fill this place full of paint fumes. That's amazing.
Right, exactly. Always operating under the safety first rule, you know, of making sure that you're, you know, have proper ventilation and that you're not enclosed and that it's being brought out.
So now what we're going to do is I'm going to change colors. What the heck? That was my mic that just fell.
I hate when that happens.
I know. I knocked it. I hooked on the chair. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this. Now, if you look here, I got my cup of water. I just take my paint cup. Never, me personally, I don't save paint. I've got all kinds of junk in there. I ain't putting it back in the bottle. Goodbye. That's a penny's worth of paint that just went in there, because you don't want any of that junk going back in the brush.
Right.
And it contaminated stuff, and you're putting it back in the bottle. You're contaminating.
Well, you've also diluted it as well.
Correct. And I put alcohol in it. Right. So
right.
What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this is just straight water that I've already pre-set up. And then I got my clean out pot. Now, what I like to do is I like to boost my pressure back up, because I'm down at like I was down at 20. So I'm going to go back up to about 40. And I'm just going to put this in here, and I'm going to pull the trigger. So you can see the mist coming out. That's all the clean. That's the water. This is a clean out pot. I got it from Micro Mart. It was about, I think, $20 or $30. Now what's happening is we're blowing this water through here, and we're cleaning out the chamber, cleaning off the needle, and it's collecting the residue on the bottom in this little glass jar. Exercise my needle back and forth a couple times, and let that go. I'm going to run some quick airbrush cleaner through it, because we're using red. Red has pigments that can kind of overwhelm stuff, so I want to make sure I clean it out as much as possible, because I'm going to change over and we're going to do some sand color now. So I put some of that cleaner in there. Take my water bottle off. "58 minutes. Okay. All right, so that's how we changed out. We've cleaned it. Now this step I'm going to show you next is very key. What I do is I put the paper towel up there, I pull the trigger, and what it does is shoots stuff out of the bottom of the siphon tube to make sure there's no residual paint in there. And then it's clean. Check my tip, make sure there's no paint stuck on the tip, because I can see there's paint on there, because we were talking. What happens is, what's key, Bill, is you have to keep moving with these. If you let these sit, they'll gum up, because the paint will start to dry.
Right, exactly. And once it dries, it is truly it must be a very a nightmare.
Oh, you're done. You're done for the night. We're taking apart the brush, and we're going upstairs and scrubbing for an hour or so.
Right, exactly.
Now I'm going to blow it out, make sure it's all dry. I'll get my other paint cup. Just like that. And my thingy is not participating. There we go.
Is that what is listed in Micro Mart as a thingy?
Yes, it's a very technical term, Bill. Thingy.
I don't want to get overcomplicated here.
All right, so we're going to take some sand.
Sparky wants to know, when you're cleaning out the brush, do you want a higher PSI?
Yeah, I generally like to boost it up as high as possible. I'm kind of yeah, in the Navy, I was always taught bigger is always better.
I hear that.
So you need to fix something, get a bigger hammer. If you're going to clean something, use more air.
Right. If you're going to shoot something out of the sky, get a bigger gun.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I'll jump in there real quick because Joe's using the fancy clean-out pot on my paint booth. What I did is just took a 5-gallon bucket. I had a plastic bucket with a top, drilled a hole in the top of it, put cheesecloth over it, and then drilled a hole in the side near the top, and I just shoot my airbrush into that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, first time I did, I forgot to put the hole in the top, and I started shooting the airbrush in there. And next thing I knew, my hand was covered in paint because it was blowing back out. So I had extra cleanup to do.
All right, so
You only do stuff like that once, hopefully.
So I use my little paper towel roll here. It's a small little caboose, so I got to kind of fold it over like that. Greatest tools you can get. They're free, they're plentiful, and when you're done with them, you throw them out.
What's that?
Paper towel roll.
Oh, yes, yes.
I picked that up, I think, from Model Rariter. I think Cody Gravino was doing it, I think, and I saw it, and I liked it. Ooh. Almost made a fatal error. I forgot to remind me that I had my pressure turned up.
Cabana Bob, this is Big Bill. Just got here. He says, didn't get an email notice you started at 8. Well, it's 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. There you go, Sparky. Through that, my brother.
Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to get some fading and stuff. So now what I've done is I've set my brush up. I cleaned it out real good. I put in some sand color, which is a totally different shade than the red. I did a test fire. And you can see that it's coming out. There's no red contaminants in there. And then what we're going to do is when we do our freight cars and stuff, we just bump down the pressure. I am down to like 20 or 15, between 15 and 20. And so maybe 19 or 18. I don't know. There's no little marks on it. And now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to get in here and I'll just start misting. And I got the brush set back. And then we're just going to, nice little cloud. And then we just work on it like that. There you go. Can you see that, Bill?
Yeah.
So just did some spraying on the edges, so it gives a little, looks like some dirt kicking up, some sand kicking up, just by taking the brush and bumping it down, and then not giving full flow. I'm only like halfway. I'm about halfway down on my trigger, and then but I'm keeping my pressure, so I'm pushing it in all the way, but I'm only pulling it half back, and that gives me that pattern. And the key was, if you look, I kind of made a little mistake right around here. I went to go spray, and I was aiming at my workpiece, so it splattered. So I got a little splatter mark. So you want to start your spray pattern off the piece, and then work your way in here.
Now, since you have that mistake, is there any way to correct that?
If you get right on it right away with maybe a soft brush and an alcohol, and maybe you could get it done. But you don't want to over scrub with these pieces, like because you'll take off decals and numbering and stuff like that. So you got to be very careful. But you could probably dull it down so you don't see it. Or if you've noticed, I've sprayed and it kind of hid. I don't know if you can see from there. By spraying it, this autofocus is not working well. By spraying it over, it's kind of hid that splatter mark. So you can kind of either try to remove it or try to work over it. So that answers the question.
John Ranson writes, for what it's worth, went to Hobby Lobby and used their 40% off coupon for my airbrush and clean out pot and saved quite a bit of money. Well, yes, that's a good Hobby Lobby. There you go. Northern Star Dwight railroad lines, Dwight says, you should paint that caboose Wisconsin red and yellow instead.
Yeah.
It's the fallen flag, and AJ writes, fallen flag and critically endangered species these days, the caboose and / shoving platform.
Yeah. So there you go. So it's got some color on it now. So it's a little weathered. So what I'm getting at here is, you could do a lot of weathering with your paintbrush too. Once you get where you feel comfortable using it, you can do a lot of weathering. We can do like a lot of the sand kick-ups. We can do some mud splatters and stuff. So airbrushing has its purposes in different facets here in the hobby. Painting freight cars, painting buildings, also weathering. So once you master it, it will allow you to do multiple different things. So what I'm going to do now, I think I'm done here. I'm going to run some water through it, and we'll clean it up for the night.
Well, that was very educational and very knowledgeable, Joe, and I do appreciate it. This little diversion. Thank goodness that the United States Post Office did their job correctly here. Get this stuff to us, so we would have been deprived of this information. As you can see, it it looks like we've kind of hit on a topic that has caused a great discussion.
Yeah. I'm just turning it off. I'll clean it later. I can't. Every time.
Andrew Gilmore wants to know what size needle is in your gun.
Fine.
Fine.
F. Fine. Badger makes F, M, and H. Fine, medium, and heavy. So that's what I'm using right now. What else? Anything else, Bill?
And Sparky says, let's look at that word mastering. That's true. That's how you become good at what your trade is. Master your tools and don't let them master you. That from AJ. Yes. Very true. Very true. Very true. I think that we can all agree that, in this hobby and in any endeavor that you take, whether it's your job, I mean, I don't care if you're a janitor and you sweep and mop floors. You have to master how to mop a floor. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to mop floors. It's when you're willing to take that time and effort to understand your job and understand what you're doing that it makes it that much more pleasurable and easy to do. If you don't like your job, well, then you have to look for another job. This hobby is something, that appeals to everyone, in every level of your skill, whether it's beginner, immediate, journeyman, par excellence, master builder, to each your own level, and every one of us can learn from each other. It's not I remember working for a plumber, and the guy who was the head plumber, he would literally throw a blanket around them and like not show you how to do anything, and you never learned. And then there was other guys who were like, here, let me show you. So it's the same here. We what we want to share, and that's the beauty of YouTube Model Builders and you guys that have YouTube channels. You're willing to share that knowledge and that information, and that's the beauty of this. So again, Joe, thank you so much for this. I think it was very, very informative.
Yeah, it's kind of just a crash course. There's a lot of other information out there, and you read up on it and experiment. That's most of my stuff is learned through experimenting.
I agree with you. I think it's you can actually tell that there's a passion that you have for it. And again, this is what YouTube Model Builders is about. We're about pushing their channels. You guys have a channel, we want to push it for you. You'll feel that when you watch Joe's. That's the reason why we brought Joe on to do Into the Locomotive Shop. He has such a passion for what he for what he does and how he does it, and it radiates through the camera, and you cannot help but to get enthused and like say, hey, I want to try that, I want to do that, So again,
I think it's also a sign of the times, Bill. I mean, you think about 25 years ago, we were flipping through pages and Model Railroader and Model Craftsman, and you're reading it, you don't quite comprehend it, but to watch somebody do it, and to talk about it live, I mean, that's tremendous.
Yeah, I agree with you.
When we were learning, when we were beginning our hobby, if YouTube was available, holy mackerel, we'd be superstars by now, you know?
Well, I agree with you, Joe, because when I first got into this hobby in 83, 82, I was going to my local hobby store out here, and I was purchasing Miles Hale's videos, and I kept saying to myself, every time I would watch his videos on my brand new, VCR, because I didn't have the DVD player, I was like saying, wow, man, I can't believe this guy's so much above me. I don't know anything about this. And, today here I am with Miles Hale on, and I still don't know anything. I'm still as ignorant as I was in 1982 and 83. But the fact of the matter is that you're right. The technology and the interchangeable, we can do video chats. We can do our YouTube Model Builders live shows. We can do our Hangouts, and we can all, through this medium, we can present our platform and show each other what we're doing and how we're doing it, and exchange of ideas and exchange of how-tos. And I'll never forget, I did a video on doing a roof, and what I did was I took sandpaper, coarse sandpaper, and I spray painted it black, and I cut some lines in it, and I used some white glue, and I thickened it, and then I painted it black again and made it look like tar lines. And some guy sent me an email and says, would it be all right if I use that technique? And I said, use it. You can have it. I stole it from somebody else, So, and it's the same thing like with those bamboo skewers and the alligator. I saw that on the car modeling. There was a guy who was doing car models, and he was showing how he holds the small things, and he was, so we learn from each other. So, again, it's what we do here, and I hope, you guys out there with the Q&A and, bringing it up makes it just that much more, what's this says, I know I was a bit of pain in the bass fishing, but what a great show. If I learned something, then I loved it. Sparky, I don't believe that you were a pain. My personal feeling, I don't think that you were. I think that you wanted to know something and you brought it out. And what I like about you, Sparky, in regards to that, is that you're not afraid to put it out there. And some people may say, well, I don't want to ask, I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing. But, that's how you learn. I think you're an electrician by trade, right? If I remember watching on your videos, I'm sure you weren't the knew it all when you did it. When you first started it, you weren't born to be an electrician, right? Mom and Dad didn't hold up flashcards and say, okay, what kind of wire is this, son? Okay, and we're gonna have a test afterwards. You kind of learned it, and you kind of went with it, and then you knew your job. So that's how you do it. So no, you're not a pain. Keep coming back and keep asking. That's how we learn. You pass it on, then you learn something, and you do something, and that's how it works. But no, not at all, Sparky. Not at all.
All right, that bunch of them was asking, or several, were asking about Joe's web address, his channel address. You want to give it out, Joe?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's Central Jersey Conrail in scale. It's IN in scale. So go check it out. Got a bunch of videos up. Working real hard to get it. I'm gonna have a bunch of videos coming out at the end of January, probably like 4 or 5. So keep your eyes out on the channel. I appreciate it if everybody comes on over, and I'm doing a bunch of different series right now. I'm just finished wrapping up the construction series. Then I'm going to start probably in February, March, doing the scenery for the layout here, and so we got those going on. I have a paint shop series going on myself, where I do like right now we're focusing on loads, making removable loads for cars and stuff like that. So that's what that one is. And then my forte is the operations series. So I do an operations video where we start out at Brown's Yard here. I brief you. We go through all the forms and paperwork and get our train together, and we go down with the crew and we do the switching. So I love doing the operations videos. So yeah, check those out. And talking about length, Bill will back me up. Those things are close to an hour. So it takes about an hour to do a good operations.
Matthew Delay asks, what are some ways that I can make a forest cheap but will look good? Puffballs sprayed green and then clumped together.
Yeah, the old puffball forest.
That's it.
Alan McClellan did that on his V&O.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
And also, I saw a very good method. Ralph Renzetti, in one of our nightly chats, we were talking about trees in the distance. And what he did to show pine trees was he took some window screen wire, cut it, about a 3-4 inch long piece, cut it so it had the dips in it like pine trees, sprayed it with glue, put some ground foam on it, kind of bowed them out a little bit, each tree, stuck it way back in the back on its background. Looked great. Looked like pine trees sitting back there in the cluster.
That's cool.
There you go. That's something that we should think about doing, Thank you, Nathan Delay. I think you've just given us an interesting topic to do on a next show. On one of our shows, we got to get somebody that wants to do this so we can get them involved. But anyway, Joe, thank you so very, very much for that and for this, and greatly appreciate Into the Locomotive Shop series that you're doing for us. And I know that next month we'll be on track, I hope. With
oh yeah, next week we're going back to the locomotives. We got another drop-in sound. It's from a different manufacturer. And so I know last month we had a little technical glitch with the sound going out, so you didn't get to hear the sound from that loco. So I'm hoping to do a side-by-side comparison so you can see the difference in the drop-in sounds. And I think what I'm doing when it gets here and I put it in, I think it's going to be pretty remarkable. I have high expectations. Let's put it that way.
High expectations. Yes. Wow, not setting them. I usually set the bar at mediocrity, very, very low. So anything that happens after that is it's a plus. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I probably just opened a can of worms, but I'm super psyched about it. So if it doesn't turn out the way I'm expecting, I'm going to be crushed. I'll just put it that way. So.
Sparky 107 asks, what is the most asked question you get asked on your channel? On Joe's channel or on this channel? Because if it's this channel, it's usually, are you really that good looking on the video as you are in person, Bill? Why you guys laugh? Why is everybody... Even my wife is laughing. I don't think that's funny. Oh, on Joe's channel. Oh, he wants to know what's the most asked question you get on your channel.
Most questions asked on my channel are in relation to Conrail because, I focus so much on the operations and modeling Conrail itself that have kind of become a source of information. A lot of people are asking, oh, well, what about how many? The big topic we had came up a couple months ago was crew size. I was under the impression that Conrail was running 2-person crews, and then we went and did some research and found out no, they're actually doing 3-person crews. So people come to me generally with Conrail type knowledge. So that's the biggest questions on my channel.
Okay.
Anything else?
Mark Donovan writes, Mark Donovan just put his cell number right on this thing, which will be on this page for perpetually eternity. So everybody who's a crackpot out there who's going to see this is going to get your phone number.
Everybody,
there.
call Mark right now.
Call Mark. Hello, Mark. Would you like to buy some solar panels?
Hey, you won the lottery, Mark.
Yeah. But he wants Sparky to call him when he gets to Amherst so they can hook up and we can all get together, and Mark's going to buy us Mark's going to buy a round of hot dogs, popcorn for everybody. So That's cool. But thank you again, Joe. I really greatly appreciate it.
Anytime. I had a blast doing it.
You know, thank you, John, for filling in tonight for Barry. Barry was detained at work. Barry works in the IT field, and from what we understand, how many was it? 1 million printers went down?
Yeah.
No, it was 1,000.
Probably seems like that.
Whether it's 1 or 1,000, it's just way too many, and they rely on Barry for his expertise and his knowledge of what he does, and what he does at his job, he does it very well. So he wasn't available tonight, but John John is the go-to fireman. Whenever we have a situation, John is ready to jump on the down and into the boots and onto the fire engine, and to the rescue John comes. So, you know, again, great job, John. Great job.
Thank you.
Producing and directing this show. And to Joe, as always, thank you again for your input and your knowledge, your compassion, and your passion for the hobby. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And to you guys out there in the community of YouTube Model Builders, thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of this. Without you, we'd be just talking to dead air out here. So thank you again. I believe that we have some homework, so John's going to be the next voice you hear in regards to upcoming shows and where we'll be going from here. And with that said, I will say adieu. Thank you. Take care, and I'll see you guys on the radio. Take over, John.
Alrighty. Just want to say, go to YouTube Model Builders. There you can check the schedules for the Tuesday and Wednesday shows. Those are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Sorry about that. I was laughing at Joe. But anyway, I can still see them. Thursday night shows are at 9 o'clock Eastern. Central. 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Our next show is going to be tomorrow night. That's Johnny's Mall Train Talk. 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Then our last show in the series of Tuesday and Wednesday shows will be January 23rd, next Tuesday night. That's going to be Ralph's weathering, main line to workbench. And once he gets done with that show, I think the next day he's leaving, like a lot of other people, for Amherst. So, like Bill said earlier, if y'all go to Amherst, be sure and look for him. I know Big Bill will be there. Andy and Ralph are teaching clinics on Friday, so look for them. Bunch of others that are in the nightly chat will be around, like Mark, Curtis, a few others. Then we'll start into February, so be sure to check the channel, YouTubeModelBuilders.com, for the schedules. While you're there, be sure to click on the email, sign up for email notification when it comes out. And with that said, I guess we'll see you tomorrow night for the Johnny Mall Train Talk Show. Y'all have a good evening. See you tomorrow night.